Welcome back to the Automation Podcast. My name is Shawn, and this week on the show, I sit down with John Gardner to talk about his brand new book, Manufacture Local. I read this book over my vacation. I thought it was awesome. It's not too long, which is great. Sometimes when books are 400 pages or 350 pages, it's a real commitment. And I really enjoyed reading this book. He put a lot of facts in it, a lot of personal stories in it from his own experience as a U.S. manufacturer. But I do want to mention that in this show, we're going to talk about our opinions. And just because there are opinions doesn't make them right, right? So, in any case, if you differ, if you think we're wrong about something, please, by all means, comment on the episode. And with that, let me just go right into this week's episode of the Automation Podcast with John Gardner talking about his new book, Manufacture Local. John, welcome back to the show. Really appreciate you coming on to talk about your new book. I read it while I was on vacation, and man, I am such a fan. Next time I see you, or when I finally get to meet you in person, I will definitely be bringing this with me to get a signed copy. But before we jump into your excellent book, which is I just found so amazing. Before we jump
Thank
into it,
you.
though, for those people who maybe have not watched the show before, could you introduce yourself? Tell people who you are.
Okay, yeah, I'm John Gardner. Boy, how far do you want me to go back? I left home when I was 18. I had a traumatic brain injury, so I didn't finish high school, and I left home in Ohio, in Pittsburgh area. Grew up around the manufacturing industry, and went west to get into acting because I got to watch movies while I was in the hospital for my brain injury. And met a lot of good people, but just really didn't like that industry. I felt it was boring standing around on set. I like to do stuff, and you kind of just stand around and wait on everything to be set for a moment on film sets or TV shows. It felt a little boring. So I wanted to start up my own business, and I remembered through my dad having a cutting tool business for a very short period of time when I was a kid, and when I was helping him, I helped him grind and craft those carbide cutting inserts when I was a child, well, 11, 12. I don't. And so I decided to start a cutting tool business out of my apartment at 25 while I was working in restaurants to pay the bills at night. And so now 20 years later, 19 years later, I have a patented cutting tool for use in broaching splines and keyways, and sell to all the Lockheed Martins and the defense departments and all the different entities. But my bread and butter are the small middle manufacturing companies. Of the 252,000 machine shops in America, 75% of them are 20 employees or less. And those are my favorite employees or clients to work with, because they're really the backbone of the industry. So that's how and then over the 20 years that I worked in the industry, or am still, I kind of started to realize how America has really lost the idea of the importance of manufacturing and manufacturing locally to our nation, for our nation's independence, and for our economic gain and for national security. So after 20 years of this sitting in my head, it all came out into a book, and so that's why we're here today.
Yes, and I gotta say, just because if you've seen John on the show, I think he's been on twice before. If you've seen him on the show, do not think that you know what's in the book, right? You got a little taste of it. But what he does is he not only mixes his personal experiences, what his father did in his career, the people he knows who are currently in the business, his customers, but also people who work for him or people who work for other places. He mixes that, right, with common sense thoughts on this, right? Like I think it was Tucker the other day said, did you know that the Made in America, one of the laws that requires companies to put on their product where it's made was repealed, and that now there's certain things that you can buy that say Made in America that are not made in America. They may just be the final packaging put on. And so things like that, John really does a good job. But not only does he do that, but he actually brings in a lot of the government's own statistics and research. He brings that into the book as well. So as you go through the book, it's just like here's the practical, here's the actual in the street, in the manufacturing plant, reality, and then here's the data that our own government has researched. And I guess my first question, John, is Was this kind of, and again, I may be leaving something out, so please let me know. But I
No,
see
thank you.
this.
You did a great job. I appreciate that. I hadn't even really thought about what you said, but I think you're spot on. I really appreciate it.
Now, when went to write the book, was that like part of the design? I'm going to use personal experience or experience of other people's personal experience, in addition to the common sense reasoning behind it and why the world works this way, as well as here's the hard data from the government, the brainiacs who, it's their job. Now, again, they give us the hard data. Some of the reports we get are fluffy by politicians, but you used hard data from these reports. Was that kind of like your strategy going into writing the book?
So when I went into it, I just wanted to get my life story down first. And that was the first goal. And that was probably that 98% cut out of this, which gives me a chance for a sequel if anybody's interested. But that kind of gave me some of the personal touchstones about my dad and how life in the manufacturing industry, starting off, from high school or a kid basically in Pittsburgh, and those kind of gave me the foundation. Then I pivoted to kind of getting some of my thoughts about unilateral free trade and what bothered me about Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell and Paul Krugman and all these economists who are worshipped as if every word they spoke is ordained by God, in some sense, in that they could never make a mistake or have a wrong thought. And so I kind of wanted to dispute some of their theories. I got so sick of hearing, well, Milton Friedman said, it's like, well, so what? He said a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's erroneous. I agree with a lot of stuff he says, but here's where he was wrong on manufacturing because he never worked in the industry. So I kind of then went from personal to addressing the economic theory and the academics and these people who've never worked in the industry, basically saying how the industry should be on Twitter. I'd kind of get frustrated because I'd see academics, everybody writing about manufacturing. Most of them don't work in the industry. And I see these academics saying, well, America needs to get robotics and America needs more engineers. I was like, hold on a minute. First of all, you can't justify an investment in robotics and automation until you have the volume to justify that. Right now, America gets mostly, as a generalization, smaller jobs because a lot of the big volume jobs get sent overseas. And until we get tariffs in place to force massive volumes of jobs come back to America, I talk to manufacturers every day. I still hear 2024. Well, I just get my first, second CNC machine. I'm like, that's like second, third industrial revolution stuff. That's not fourth or fifth industrial revolution. And they just don't have the volume to justify the investment. So they keep their manual machine instead of putting money into a new automated machine. So I'm totally off topic here, man. But the thought process going into it is I really kind of stumbled my way there. As far as I started to really see the value in talking to the people I know in the industry and getting their stories and how much better it was to reflect their experience as rather than just my own voice. And I felt very, I don't know, honored that they would share these things with me and take the time. So I tried to include a lot of different people, vendors, clients, friends, customers in the industry over 20 years. And that was kind of the process, and then I took a look at everything I had compiled and I was like, man, this is too much. And I really just wanted to go lean and mean with the most important stuff. I left a lot out, but I wanted a book that an eighth grader could read and be like, wow, I can join the industry. I want to be in the industry, not have college debt, start learning skill sets, in high school, and then be making good money right out of high school and work my way up, and I wanted it to be simple enough for a kid to read and appreciate and understand, but also be complex and informative enough for a politician or a academic or someone supposedly smart to be able to change their mindset from this kind of brainwashing of America that I believe has happened in the last 50, 60 years regarding free trade. So I don't know. That's the longest answer ever to your question, Shawn.
No, that was great. And I want to key on one thing though, and I want to agree with it. I follow a lot of people, and I follow a lot of smart people because I'm still learning. I'm close to the 60 and 50, and I'm still learning every day. And I don't think there'll be a day in my life I don't learn. And I tried not to be I never want to come off as a know-it-all because I don't, right? And all my knowledge that I have came from somebody else. Somebody taught me something, and I still learn today from people. It's awesome. But I think when you're a Milton Friedman or you're a Patrick Byrne, or you're one of these big guys who is constantly, very smart. I'm doing great, and I think it's easy to think every idea you have is right. And while those people have lots of great Thomas Sowell, they have lots of great
Great
ideas.
stuff. I agree with
Yes,
90% of what they say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not everything they say, because until you work in manufacturing, I think the audience will really, and you do a good job of this in your book. Like I was having like flashbacks to when I first got into manufacturing, right? So as a technical expert trying to help people apply technical products in manufacturing and other industries, trying to explain to them how they get to work, I would learn their applications, right? So I would learn how they were making soda and bottling it. I would learn how they were making plastic, how they were, you know, um, pumping fresh water to homes, how they were, doing different things. And, it was just great going from site to site to site, learning so much about how all these different things happen. But one of the things I found is when I would try to explain it to people like uncles and aunts and parents and siblings, no idea, because none of them worked in manufacturing. So they're like everything's made in China. It's like, dude, you pass 5 manufacturing plants on one street alone on your way home from work. What do you mean everything's made overseas? There's all these plants. I visit them all the time.
Yeah.
They're making stuff all around you, and it's like, yeah, we all know the high volume stuff may go somewhere else, not because of loopholes and laws that allow importers to import lots of stuff, but while we can't export lots of stuff. But I won't get into that. I don't want to go down that road until we talk about it in the book. But long story short, I think you really hit on the fact that people outside of, even smart people outside of manufacturing, have no clue about manufacturing. And I think you did a great job of explaining that to the layman. Like I said, I was having flashbacks. But could you kind of, I mean, this is, you were really frustrated, especially working with some of like the Small Business Association. Can you talk about that a little bit, how you find that a lot of the people making the policy, passing the laws, making proclamations about how we should go, how they just have no clue?
They have no clue. And it's really sad, for our country that people don't understand the foundation of all economy is having a product made and selling it, period. 80% of global trade is based on products, 20% is based on service. All, Elon Musk did he said, in his words, do the thought experiment. If you're on an island and you have a pallet of cash or a pallet of food, the product wins. Like, so the foundation of economy is having something tangible to trade, and so being able to produce that is very powerful for a nation and provides independence for that nation. And if you can't, then you're reliant on other nations, and that is not a sovereign or safe nation. So back to your original question about, I say all that about sovereignty and safety because the defense industrial base is in a very vulnerable state with significant amounts of our defense industrial base supplies coming from overseas, a lot of times adversarial nations like China. So one of my experiences was where when COVID hit, I had supplied many branches of the U.S. military, Navy, Air Force, Army, a lot of Navy, with my product over the years. And in 2020, when COVID hit, I got a letter saying that you're an essential service to the U.S. Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, and you're not allowed to shut down. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. That made me feel that's kind of cool. I didn't know I was doing that. And then, so when my sales dropped by 60% when COVID hit, and in the ensuing months, and all of a sudden, I was like, I need a loan. I need a business loan, and they hadn't really formulated the PPP, which really didn't help business owners with working capital. It was more just to pay employees with some stuff, and it helped a little bit. It was kind of a stopgap emergency thing, and the idle loan hadn't really been available yet. So I was hitting up all the things I could do, and I brought this letter and all the, I have pretty good numbers, and bankers just didn't understand manufacturing, and they're all terrified to lend. I'm like, does this letter mean anything? I supply the defense industrial base. They told me I'm not allowed to shut down. Like, it's your fault if I shut down. And the quote, and I remember it because I felt like I kind of punched in the stomach. You know what? You hear somebody say something, you have a physical reaction to it. The banker's like, well, we'd rather lend to something normal like a Taco Bell. And that's a quote. And that was really resonating with me, is that they don't understand it. And how sad of our Pentagon, our Defense Department, where that they don't put any importance on helping the businesses that they demand stay in business, and that they relegate them to being treated the same as every other business in the Small Business Association. And they don't understand the number that 75% of the 252,000 manufacturing companies out there are 20 employees or less. Yet the SBA classifies a small business as 500 employees or less. Think about that for a second. So I heard from the SBA verbatim several times that they don't even like to lend to smaller companies that only want like a $500,000 loan, because they have to do the same amount of work, the same amount of due diligence as they would for a larger company. So that loophole where the SBA classifies a small business as 500 employees, does 500 employees sound like a small business to you? 500 W-2 employees? That's not small business, especially in the age of email and AI. You know what I mean? So the SBA gives the loophole to banks to be able to lend to the upper crust and really ignore their mandate to help the smaller people. And that, in my opinion, really affects the defense industrial base at the end of the day, because 75% of the 252,000 manufacturing companies are 20 employees or less. And I've ran into that, dead stop. And then, you go to the SBA and you're like, oh, manufacturing. You start to follow the links and you find out the way to get help from the SBA, Small Business Association, as a manufacturer, is to get certified as disadvantaged. So if you're not disadvantaged in some way, then forget about it. Then you find out, well, what does disadvantage mean? It all boils down to gender orientation and skin color, and not, whether you have a product that matters to the defense industrial base, whether you have a product that matters to America. None of that matters. And so, I followed every link in the SBA manufacturer page, and it's all baloney and smoke and mirrors to basically do what politicians do, is do their pet projects of, we could go on another rant about that. But so anyway, that was the fact that our defense industrial base does zero to help small manufacturers stay funded and grow is disgusting to me, when our entire military relies on manufactured goods, period. And they do zero. The defense industrial base, the Pentagon and Defense Department do zero to help small manufacturers.
Yeah, I just want to shout out to Peter Navarro, another very smart person. But this happened under your watch, Peter.
It did.
This is something you should have known about.
I think,
not that you can move mountains, but.
Yeah, and I respect Peter Navarro, and I think he did a lot of good things but he was an academic. He's a doctor. He's only worked in a classroom. All the respect in the world. I loved how he brought tariffs in and made them a hot item again. But he never worked in the industry, and not that you have to be able to contribute, but I think that these politician and academic types need to start consulting with people from the industry beyond just the CEOs. I'd see, President Trump meeting with the CEO of John Deere. I'm like, dude, the guy went to college. He never ran a mill making anything. He never, meet with the guys that run these smaller machine shops, and you'll meet the smartest people in the world who could tell you how you can help them. And that was the point of the book, is like, I wanted a voice for the 75% of those 20 employees or less, machine shops, because those are the real guys that are some of the smartest people I've ever met. And so, anyway, really long answer to your questions.
No, yeah, and I do want to get back to the new engineer versus the experienced operator. Let's talk about that next. But before we get to that, I really think I want to jump into this. So we talked about, and I think you did a great job in your book talking about how manufacturing, you just don't know manufacturing unless you've been in manufacturing.
And I have something I'm dying to say about this. I have to grab a book off my shelf. Is that okay if I grab a book off my shelf? Because this is going to tie right into your question, and I'm so excited to share this. Hold on. So So this is great question, by the way. I've been dying for somebody to ask me that. You don't know manufacturing unless you know manufacturing. And the academics, Peter Navarro, I like him. He did great stuff for tariffs, Friedman and all them. Let me give you a perfect example how if you don't know manufacturing, you should shut up. So this is Milton Friedman's book. This is Free to Choose, famous book, Milton Friedman. I am reading his exact words. Now you tell me if this guy knows the first thing about manufacturing, especially when it is regarding national security. He says, suppose this is in regards to national security and the steel industry. And he said, the national security argument that a thriving domestic steel industry, for example, is needed for defense has no basis. National defense needs to take only a small fraction of total steel used in the United States, and it is inconceivable that complete free trade in steel would destroy the U.S. steel industry. Sounds kind of like you got it wrong. It is inconceivable that complete free trade in steel would destroy the U.S. steel industry, as we have Japan buying U.S. steel. But this gets even more. The advantages of being anyway. Here, suppose it did prove cheaper to buy all of our steel abroad, right? There are alternative ways to provide for national security. This guy knows nothing about manufacturing national security. We could stockpile steel. Really? Are you going to stockpile 4140 or 4340? Are you going to stockpile 30 Rockwell 4140 or 53 Rockwell 4140? Are you going to do 303 stainless or 304 stainless? Are you going to do 1018 or are you going to do titanium? Are you going to stockpile round bars at a 1/4 inch or round bars at an inch? I mean, you have to be a damn fool to think this makes any sense. I mean, so we could stockpile steel. That is easy. Oh, it's easy. It's easy. We'll stockpile steel. We're going to do large chunks of steel this big. And here's what he doesn't understand. When you move steel production off, the secondary industries follow because they need to be physically near it. So the secondary industries like black oxide, heat treat, machining to take steel and turn it down into the shapes you need, they don't stay here and we just get steel from overseas. They're going to go there. So let me finish this up. And there are alternative ways to provide for national security. We could stockpile steel. That is easy, since steel takes relatively little space and is not perishable. Okay. We could maintain some steel plants in mothballs, the way we maintain ships, to go into production in case of need. Now, let's get this right. Human capital, the people that work in these plants, they just walk in out of fast food after 20 years of having a plant mothballed. Is that what we're supposed to believe, right? I mean, now, is my analysis wrong? I didn't complete high school, Shawn. Am I the dum-dum here, or is Milton Friedman, the acclaimed economist, the dum-dum? And I'm not saying this out of arrogance, but who's the dum-dum here?
There is so much wrong. And before we go any further,
hey, everybody, because I get a lot of angry people that say, how dare you say anything against Friedman? So everybody, Milton Friedman, the genius, prove me wrong that we shouldn't manufacture local.
Now, before we go any further, I do want to say to the audience, there are 8 billion of us on this planet. We all have our own opinions.
Yeah.
I totally want you guys to comment in and share your opinions on this episode wherever you're watching it. On some of the smaller platforms, I may not see it. You can comment every place it goes. And I definitely, if you feel strongly that we got something wrong, let us know. But I want to switch back to what you just said.
But the biggest thing is the people in our industry, they have to do their job. It's a practice. Like a doctor has to do surgery. He doesn't mothball a doctor and pull a doctor out to operate on somebody. You know what I mean? Like, you don't mothball a lawyer and bring him on for trial after 5 years in mothballs. The manufacturing industry is something you have to do in practice. And the human capital, us, the people, the machinists, the engineers, they have to do it across many different mediums to be experts at what they do. And what he says there, to me, shows he does not have any understanding of the manufacturing industry and what it takes. And he hurt America's national security, in my opinion, with his words. So that's my opinion. And I respect everybody else's opinion, but prove me wrong. And I think plenty of people have argued for Friedman over the last 50 years. So that's probably why I seem a little escalated about it, because I catch a lot of heat online. Everybody's like, how dare you say anything negative about Milton Friedman? And so
Now, if anybody's been into a mothballed facility or a facility that's being maintained at a very, very slow pace, it is some of the most biggest wasted money in the world. You would be better to design a plant for dual purpose that can make pots and pans when we're not in war, and then can make shell casings and other military things when you're in war, than
Sean, brilliant,
mothball
brilliant
a
point.
facility.
America won World War II because we were able to turn civil manufacturing into military manufacturing. The Lionel Toy Train Company made compasses for ships. Singer sewing machines. My wife still has one. They went from making sewing machines to bomb sites. On and on and on. All these companies turn from civil. So a nation that is truly independent and secure has a strong civil manufacturing that could be turned military if necessary. Not no civil, and then all of a sudden you have to ramp up for war. And I didn't mean to interrupt you again, but that is just a great point you made.
Yeah, and I just want to agree with what you just read. He was so wrong about that in so many levels. We could probably spend a day just talking about that one statement he made, or that one paragraph. How, and I'm sure there's probably some audience members too, and they're like, "What was he thinking? Does he live in reality?" But I do want to move over to something that you talked about in the book that I thought was very, very interesting. And you go through the book and you talk about this, and we just touched on it. But I've heard all growing up. I'm an '80s kid. I grew up in the '70s and '80s. Got married in the late '80s. Graduated college in the late '80s. Um, you know, we were always told we're moving to a service economy. But one of the things you do in your book is you point out, just like you did with your Elon Musk living on an island scenario, and I want you to comment on this. If you are a service only economy, then you are a third world nation. And I'm kind of paraphrasing what you're saying. Could you, for maybe somebody who hasn't read the book yet, could you drive home that thought a little bit more?
Yeah, 80% of global trade is based on products and goods. Services are reliant on manufactured goods. You look at a house, like a realtor and a banker and a title company, they make the money and serve the servicing of a house sale. But the product, they're reliant on the product, the house, which has so many inputs, concrete and the tools to make the concrete and the tools, they're reliant on a product. And if you embrace a service economy, then you are embracing reliance on those who make the products. If you're a barista and you're going to have a coffee shop, your service business is reliant on the product of coffee beans and the mechanisms of an espresso machine. Services are reliant on products, period. No matter what any economist or academic says, they are reliant on products to be sold. And so no nation led by smart people that want to have a nation embrace reliance on other nations because history for 10,000 years has shown war is the most constant state of civilization, and you'll be attacked. So I think that in our embrace of free trade and service economy, and the term post-industrial is used as if that is a positive thing. If you're a post-industrial economy, it means you're a pre-industrial economy. It means you don't have the manufacturing capacity and to make what you need. So you have to rely on other people. These words have been kind of thrown around as if they're positive things, but if you look at the common sense behind them, they're not positive. And that's what I try to illuminate in my book.
And I know a lot of people are thinking, well, but what about food? I mean, a single farmer can farm a lot of acres, and then a lot of people get to eat that product. And that's true. But most people don't eat the raw food. I mean, we all like a nice fresh apple or carrots, but a lot of times, and you can get all that locally too, which is nice, but most of it, but a lot of times that goes into a product that is either canned or it's put into a recipe and made something. Most people today, they're not buying the raw product. So there's a lot of people doing all those things. And I just to kind of drive this home, and you do it in the book. If you are a service economy and you make anything, you don't make anything, right? How could you ever, like, you are at the mercy of everybody else for everything, not just national defense. Your national defense will eventually, because you're just buying stuff for other people.
Well, you
You're
brought
at the
up
mercy.
food. You brought up food? What if you say you have a strong farming industry, but you're a service economy? Well, what if the nation that sends you your tractors and combines decide they're not going to send them anymore? Then guess what? Your people are going to starve eventually. It's like you have to be able to make products and manufacture goods to be a strong, independent nation.
I agree, and I think all nations should be, within measure. Some real tiny nations may not to do it, but I think all nations should be trying to feed themselves. All nations should be able to try and make as many goods locally as they can. And it's good for America, but it's good for every country. And I just want people to think about this. If you're completely a service economy or 90% a service economy, you are basically a third world country because you rely on everybody else in the world for everything you have. And the only thing you have is waitresses and waiters and taxi drivers. And if the company that sells you your vehicles decides not to sell you spare parts, you don't even have taxis anymore. Now you have, people pulling you around, with a rickshaw or something. You know what I'm saying? And that's why every country needs to be self-sufficient to a point, and we just can't say we're going to let them make all our stuff and we're just going to be that. Again, I'm not doing it justice, but in your book, you did a great job of showing how that is a lie. That if you're not manufacturing, you're basically a third. And there's been so many vibrant economies over the world where somebody gets to the government, changes their import laws, and they get flooded with cheap imports from overseas, and it decimates the country because everybody's out of work. Because whether it's rice or whether it's cars or whether it's soft drinks, this has happened over and over and over again. And the whole economy becomes poor because nobody has a job because of the cheap imports. But I'll give you the final word on that.
Oh, I mean, I think that was great. One of the things that I think America has lost sight of in our pursuit of the service economy and the post-industrial economy and unilateral free trade is the moral obligation America has to make stuff in America. We fought a civil war to end slavery and forced labor here in America, and it was righteous and it was the right thing to do. Yet our supply chain is permeated with goods made with forced labor from overseas, and but our moral obligation to be opposed to forced labor is been abandoned at the border in the name of free trade. And so I believe beyond the national security obligation and the patriotic obligation to buy American, there's a moral obligation to send our dollar to businesses that pay fair and square wages and follow laws that reduce environmental harm, which American companies are made to follow. And the government should pass tariffs to disincentivize companies from pursuing companies who would prefer to ignore their moral obligation to avoid forced labor. A lot of those companies typically lecture America about our past, yet they'll go, Apple and China. Anyway, for Apple and China, sorry, so they'll end up lecturing America about our past, but they'll be doing the same thing. So I think America should pass tariffs to, kind of disincentivize that and force people to have some morals in their business, possibly. So,
No, I totally agree. I'm part of that group who thinks that after much thought, and I did not believe this for a long time, that we should go back 100 years and fund the government with tariffs and fees and get rid of this income tax. And I know that'll draw a lot of people's earth. They'll say that's crazy, but if you actually do any research about it, it makes a lot of sense. But I want to say this, even if you're against tariffs, what about reciprocal agreements? Like, why do we let stuff in here where we can't sell the same things over there? Like, that should be illegal. And then the biggest thing, which you just brought up, I really think it's dark. To tell a manufacturer, you cannot manufacture a product here in the US unless you meet all these laws. But if you step a foot over the border, you don't have to follow any of those laws.
it's
That seems right.
mind-boggling. I mean, if I had forced labor in Iowa, or I have a shop in Phoenix, right? So if I had somebody there that, was being paid $1 a day and was allowed to sleep on the shop floor, and I would go to jail. But if I decided to do that same thing overseas, I would be fine. I don't understand that as a nation. I really don't. So
There's been a lot of I guess this is not my favorite saying, but a lot of lipstick has been put on a pig. There's been some really bad policies that have been dressed up, given a perm, but at the bottom of it, they're really bad.
I think that the one that has been given a lipstick and a perm the most is tariffs are a tax on American. That's a lie. And anybody
Complete
watching
lie.
that says, well, I don't believe in tariffs, you're lying to yourself. Go look in the mirror. You're lying to yourself if you say it's a tax on Americans. You want to know why? Because Americans can buy American if they want to avoid the tax. Go buy American. You can 100% avoid it. And they never mention that in their anti-tariff arguments. They didn't, they just never mention it. Like, buy American then. That's the goal of tariffs, is to promote people buying American. That's the point of them. so they completely avoid the whole point of it when people just say, oh, tariffs are a tax on Americans. And I think, because we have offshored so heavily, I do think that there will be a little period of pain, but I think that that'll ultimately lead to a lot more manufacturers getting the volumes they need to invest in robotics and automation, to then where American manufacturers can lower their prices because they'll be benefiting from economy of scale. And economy of scale and increasing returns is the economic theory that I don't hear any economists talking about. When a manufacturer has 1 million parts to make, the per part price goes way down. When he has 100 150 pieces, it goes way up. And so that's why American manufacturers tend to have higher prices. They don't get massive runs like that, So I think that lie that tariffs are a tax on Americans. Also, the people most opposed to tariffs are the ones that also want income tax and sales tax to go away. So, I believe in small government, but how are you going to fund the government? And they're the ones that also never account for the fact that for the first 140 years of America's existence, America funded itself, the federal government, with tariffs. Look it up, everybody. 1786 to 1926, 120 years of tariffs funded the American government, other than a few months where we passed the income tax during the Civil War and everybody got mad about it. But then all of a sudden, the federal funding system that the founding fathers designed, which took the tax burden off the citizen and put it on, foreign goods coming in here to then promote domestic manufacturing, has been turned on its head 180 degrees to where the tax burden's solely on the system. Instead of an external revenue service, we have an internal revenue system. And if I go to jail, if I do something wrong on my personal tax return, I could go to jail. Yet these foreign manufacturers cheat, lie, steal, chill. There's no enforcement on them. There's no external revenue service system to target them and hold them to the laws that the trade agreements that they agree to. Why? It's easier to target the low-hanging fruit of citizens. Anyway, I'm going totally off topic and rambling. I'm sorry, Shawn.
No, and I think you were the one talking about too. Yeah, you did a great job in this. You really filled in some holes in this for me. But how customs doesn't even check this loophole of sending small packages directly. People don't realize, but a company can sell $1 billion worth of product in America and avoid all of the tariffs. Go ahead.
You're talking about the de minimis law, de minimis loophole. It is so wrong of a law. And I'll just tell you about de minimis meant a minimum value. And it basically was put in place, I think, in the 30s, where when Americans would travel overseas and they wanted to ship something back home to their relatives, we didn't want to charge them a customs fee. So we could say, okay, under $4, if you ship something under $4, we're not going to charge anything, right? So I think it was in the when NAFTA came out, they raised the de minimis value of it was around $5 to $200. Now you look around your home in the 90s, and there wasn't a lot over $200 of your day-to-day goods. So that what the de minimis law allows is anybody overseas can ship something into America, not even declare it to customs. They just say it's under this value, and it doesn't get even looked at by customs. It just flies right through. So then during the Obama administration, I think it was 2014, they raised the de minimis level from $200 to $800. Now, mind you, the average of all other nations in the world is I think $11 or $18, extremely low. We raised ours to $800. Now, you look around your home again, how many items are under $800? That means anything declared of value less than $800 can come in without any custom oversight. And that's how a lot of fentanyl and counterfeit goods are coming in America, because we didn't even look at those boxes. and it puts the responsibility on the shipper, who could be a communist Chinese slaver, who to say, oh, they declare the value. Oh, my package is $799, doesn't get looked at. And I had an experience where I was in Florida, Miami Airport, at the office's Department of Homeland Security, getting my global entry card, and the agent, the Homeland Security agent, was a very intimidating guy, big, strong guy, and he was, that he's giving me this lecture. If you don't declare that you have over $800, we'll search your goods, we'll seize your stuff. Well, you're going to be in big trouble if you don't declare this. And I looked at him and I was like, you guys don't do that for foreign companies, though. You don't ever check their stuff. You just check people flying in. But you don't check the millions of packages coming into our board, tens of millions of packages coming in where people just say it's under $800. And this guy, this big, huge football player looking dude, he's like, how do you know about that? And I was like, I follow trade law. He's like, man, he's like, you're right. He's like, I worked at I think he said he was in Korea at a customs clearinghouse. And he said, you wouldn't even understand the millions of packages that come through there that don't even get looked at. And he kind of talked a little bit more about how nobody's got their eye on the football with goods coming in from overseas. And then he got embarrassed and passed me without any more hardship. But anyway, the de minimis law we need to be on the same average level because it gives our customs and border enforcement a chance to to enforce the laws that exist. And so anyway, that's a long answer to your to your.
I just want to throw out there too, pay as you go. Me as Joe taxpayer, I don't want to pay for an importer's inspections. This should all be pay as you go. If you're importing something, you pay to have your stuff inspected by the government.
Yep.
The Joe taxpayer I honestly want my stuff to come from America. If you want to import the stuff you're selling me, you pay to have customs.
Man, I got to write that down. That's great. Good one, Shawn. I like that. There should be a fee for importers to pay for the inspection of their goods because why?
Why would I? Same thing with containers and shipping. Port security. Why would I want to pay to inspect some foreign company's products they're shipping in? That should be on them. It should be pay as you go, right? I mean, we pay gas tax, or assuming you're still driving a semi truck full of products. If you're driving it across the U.S., you're paying taxes on your fuel. That goes for the roads and bridges, we hope.
Yeah, right.
But why do I want to pay for the port security? That should be the importers who pay that. And and maybe when we export, the other country charges us to inspect. Who cares? I'm cool with that. But people need to get paid for the work they do.
That was a great argument, because the comments now from Customs and Border, and there's like, oh, we don't have enough personnel to inspect all these packages coming in, and
self-funding.
So it's like, then charge the people bringing them in. Like, why is it? Yeah, that's a great point. I like that, Shawn.
I mean, there's a TSA tax when I go on a plane and get why do I still have to take my shoes off in some airports? But I'll be on that. Let me move on. It is 2024, but I think a lot of these problems, and you do a great job in your book talking about this. And I want to, unless you want to go somewhere else, I don't want to forget to talk about the new engineer and the veteran operator, machine operator, who has just a world of knowledge. And sometimes you brought these people together, if I remember correctly, and it was like it just freed them when they could actually work together to solve problems instead of just saying has to meet this spec. And I think you were talking to some customers like, you can't do that. It's like, where did the shavings go? It's like, I remember that. It's like they just don't disappear. This isn't a video game. Not that you said that.
Let me tell you so you're referencing the chapter, Make America's Engineers Great Again. And, I know we probably have a lot of engineers watching. So I want to say, for you smart ones who have experience, I have all the respect in the world for you. In my 20 years of selling a cutting tool, I've talked to tens of thousands of engineers. My dad was a mechanical engineer, and he worked his way up in a shop first, though. And so he got experience first before he learned how to design anything. And what I encounter, maybe in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, when I first started my business, I would run into engineers who had a lot of experience actually making stuff and on the job. But the point of that chapter is to say our educational system, our engineering training is the problem. And that I had a guy just a month or two ago, while I was writing the book, actually, 4 months ago, I was telling him about the book I was writing, and he's like, I got my degree in engineering, and I realized I didn't know how to make anything. He's like, I only had a semester of shop. He's like, I could draw anything up you wanted. I could design anything you wanted. And I realized I couldn't make it. So he's like, I went and spent a couple years in a machine shop, just start off at the grunt level, learning how to make automotive parts or aerospace parts, the difference between mil spec and aerospec, and learning about like what actually goes into it on a machine level in production versus prototyping and all that. And he's like, then I decided to start my own shop because, he's like, I learned. So I've encountered so many engineers who are out of college and are typically at the big corporations. SpaceX hires some really nice young guys that don't know diddly about making something. They could draw something that will go to the moon, but they're making it, and so just to give you a simple example that's in my book is I make a cutting tool that makes a keyway. Well, so a slot, right? So I'll have engineers, our inserts, the insert that cuts that slot. Say you want a slot that's cut that's a 1/4 inch, right? 250 thou. The inserts that cut that are typically oversized a thousandths or two at 251 or 252 thousandths plus 1 minus 0. And the purpose of that is so the key fits in the slot that you're cutting, because key stock is typically larger than keyways, so you have to have it fit. So engineers of the past just knew this. They knew what it took because they had to start off making stuff. And they usually had shop class in high school before they got the college engineering, so they had a foundation. And that's one of the key ingredients we're missing in our educational system is shop class. But so I've had hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of times where, engineers from big time companies will call up and they'll say, hey, why is it a special to get a 1/4 inch insert? I'm like, well, it's not. And like, well, it's oversized. I'm like, yeah. And then they're like, well, we have to grind it down to make it the size you want. Like, well, nobody would design it a slot on 250 thousandths and design it a couple thou over so the key stock fits. And then if you have a special key slot, that means you have to have special key stock itself. And they don't understand what I'm saying. They're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, and I give them the simple example of go to your door and put your key in the doorway. If the key is the same size as the keyway, the slot, it won't fit. And that's why we make our inserts oversized. Oh, I have to redo my drawing, but I can't. I got to prove. Okay, well, then you got to pay for the special. And idiot mistakes like this, because of lack of experience and lack of desire to learn from the older guys that are in a shop or go down on the shop floor and talk to them, is raising the cost of American manufacturing dramatically.
Yeah, and the cynic in me says it's on purpose, or at least it's because of incompetence. I mean, you think about, would you want the person designing the plumbing in your brand new house to be the guy who only patches leaks? That guy's not, if only does go around and patches leaks, do you think he has the capability to design a complete system? I mean,
or the architect that designs the whole house, designing the plumbing system and building it and patching the leaks, vice versa. It's either way. The guys that I found that know the most in the industry are the guys with the most breadth of experience. Like the guys who start off on a floor on several machines, then they got certified in CAD, and then they started gear design, and they have that massive, broad experience. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say most doctors never learn anything about nutrition. But nutrition is the cause of most illnesses, bad nutrition, poor nutrition, right? And so it's just that our whole system is messed up. And I know the audience knows what we're talking about because they have been there where some CEO or some president or some executive or plant manager said, well, why can't you just make the system do this? And I used to reply to that. Yeah, and why don't you, I heard you wanted a Ferrari. Why don't you just go make one in your backyard? Right? I mean, that's what you're asking me to do. You're asking me to make the thing do something that is either going to cost you millions of dollars or is completely impractical. When there's a simpler way, a better way, and that's, I think you really drew this out in the book where you talk about, this is the 3D printer generation where they're not thinking about what it takes to actually make things.
Yeah. It designed for manufacturability. 90% of cost is in design for manufacturability. And I think, my dad said, after he worked in shops, he did go to get an engineering degree, mechanical engineering degree at, I think, Penn State. And then he got a job at a engineering firm in Newark. And I asked him, and I think I put this in the book, that he said he learned everything he knew. He didn't even know how to tolerance a print until he went, and all the guys at the engineering firm trained him on, here's how you tolerance a blueprint. Here's how what you do. Here's how you be an engineer. My dad said he learned 95% of what he knows about engineering from that older generation. But he had an open mind to learning. And a lot of times you'll get these young engineers and they have a piece of paper, says they're an engineer and they know everything and they can make it look real pretty on a, SolidWorks model on a computer. But then when you point out, well, you designed it without a relief, so how are you going to manufacture this? The cost just went up 20 times. And to everybody listening, I have all the respect in the world for engineers with experience. My engineering manager, who I think is the smartest guy I've ever met, other than my dad, is he was on a lathe at 18 years old in a shop, had 3 kids by the time he was 21, worked his way up learning machine after machine, learning AutoCAD at night, and then he became the engineering manager of a 55-man aerospace machine shop in Phoenix doing military stuff, F-35 programs, smartest guy I know. He learned everything he knew through the practice, not the school. And I think it boils down to our educational system starting in junior high. That's I don't blame the people, although they frustrate me when I have to use terms like, you need a clearance because our tool is in a Harry Potter one that magically evaporates the material it's cutting. You have to have a clearance, and they don't understand it, that, well, why can't you just make it go, the material go away? You have to have a clearance, dude. But it's really the educational system that's fault. And that goes back to the academics, and the economists, and the politicians who don't understand the value of our industry and what we need to sustain it. And we need a sustained pipeline of talent to keep our great industry going.
Yeah, and again, it's not the people. We hired an engineer, not my company, but a company I worked for. We hired somebody out of college, smart kid, who had a computer degree. He comes in first day, look, we're really busy. Probably take us a few days. Can you go format all the computers in the training room, reinstall Windows, and we'll give you the software we want put on there? And he's like, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, you have a computer engineering degree. Have you ever used a computer? I mean, I was teaching my kids when they were 5 how to build their own computers. It's not that difficult, but it wasn't that. And we taught him. He was awesome, smart person. But it's the systems. It's this, I guess hardworking people don't typically become politicians because that's like they don't see that as productive, right? But if none of the people with practical knowledge ever get involved in developing curriculums at colleges or get involved in what our government is actually spending their time doing, then we're going to get the lowest of the low, the bottom of the barrel in those positions, and we're going to end up with some bad situations. And I totally agree with you. I still have, now I'm closer to 60 than 50, and I still have things I made in shop class in junior high to this day, signs with my name on it. And it's not like my kids who made a bunch of things with clay that I call it a shop of horrors. My wife has them on the windowsill. I'm like, this is the shop of horrors because they're ugly, most of them. And they're just like deformed clay. No, I made stuff like wood signs and, mailboxes and birdhouses and stuff that actually the instructor wouldn't let you make bad. They didn't want to be embarrassed when you brought it home.
Right.
And I totally agree with you. You made such a good point about that. And, in the book.
Just so no engineers feel we're picking on them, because I know plenty of dumb machinists who don't want to learn anything new. They just want to stay on the same lathe and they'll make scrap. It doesn't matter. They'll set our tool up and not screw the set screws in. I know plenty of people. It's not a knock on. I have all the admiration in the world for engineers, especially the old school ones who have experience. So I just want to be clear about that, so nobody feels denigrated in any way. So.
Yeah, and most of the people listening to this show, I got to say, and I'm not saying this to suck up to the people listening to this show. The people listening to this show are the cream of the crop. I mean, who else? I mean, an engineer, electrician, or technician who listens every week to half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour show about products from every vendor under the sun, they are the cream of. These are the top of the top of the top. So I just want to tell my audience, I think you guys are awesome. Nothing we're saying is pointed at you.
Anybody in our industry that is pursuing further knowledge rather than settling and assuming they know, I have all the admiration for in the world. Like anybody that's pursuing more knowledge, because, I have a line in my book. I probably can't even remember to say it correctly, but it's like, true knowledge is built on the shop floor, and the first thing you learn is you can never stop learning on a shop floor. And that's what I say. And that's what you learn in college. Like, hey, learning is ended. You have your piece of paper. And unfortunately, that seems to have infected our youth's minds to some extent. Now I'm realizing it's 2024. I started this in 2005, and I'm seeing the next generation of young engineers, and that's what I think I'm experiencing. But you never. The first thing you learn is you can never stop learning. And if you're aware of that, I have appreciation for you.
Yeah, and I think one bright spot in all of this is the maker scene, where young people are actually making stuff and they're learning.
And they love it.
And they're learning and they're loving it and they want to learn more and they want to make more. And I think that's a bright spot. Hands-on with electronics, electricity, product manufacturing, doing multiple editions of a product to get it just right, whether it's a case for your phone or a case for your computer. And, I love the modding scenes on computers where the kids are, souping them up, doing water cooling. And I won't do water cooling. My son and I got in a big fight about this, but that is awesome. So there are bright spots out there for our youth. My oldest grandson, who is 15, just got into the drone program at his high school. He's all excited. He also got into pre-engineering. So there are a lot of bright spots out there. But there's also dark spots where we have, and I was never one to do this, but a lot of our youth, and including some of my grandkids, are spending 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock every day just playing the same game over and over and over again. And if they were playing different games every day, that's one thing. But doing something repetitive like that, that's not the best thing for them. But I don't want to stray too far from the book. So we covered how you talk about how manufacturing, that you just can't know manufacturing without spending some time on the plant floor.
Yeah.
And what you do is a lot different than what I do. You're in the machine tool area. I'm on the automated side where there's a lot of conveyors, a lot of, machines, injection molding. There's a lot of assembly, pick and place. I just could go on and on and on. But it's really the same thing. You don't know what you don't know until you get down there on the plant floor. You're with the people, that guy who's been working the line for 20 years, or that engineer who's designed, 100 different machines in his career. And these are some of the smartest people you'll ever meet. And anybody who's in the place to make policy, you got to talk to these people. You can't just wing it like a Milton Freeman. And so we talked about that, and I love that part of your book. I loved your personal stories. You've just recanted us a few of them, and the book's full of that. Do you have one or two favorite stories that we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to talk about?
Favorite stories from the book, or
anything that we haven't already talked about.
Oh boy, hold on.
And I didn't. Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a different question while you think about that.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
No. Tell me about the data, because you found so much data, official government reports and reports by respected institutions, and this data contradicts what the policy planners are actually putting into place. Talk to us about the data.
We didn't even put in. I think there's 80 bibliography references, and I think I had about 180 before I edited the book down and got it, leaned out and concise. But, the Defense Department states that for every dollar invested in manufacturing, it generates $2.79 in economy, and that it supports 7 to 10 other jobs within your own economy. So that study alone refutes international free trade, where you can exponentially grow your own economy in a circular economy system where the dollar you spend goes to a American-made good that then goes to the baker that the manufacturer's family buys from. It just goes down the line, that one was a big one. There was a lot of data that I found that showed the dramatic drop-off after NAFTA in the 90s, but specifically after we gave China most favored nation status in 2000. There was a study I think I quoted that basically looked at the manufacturing data from 2011. Mind you, I also quote in the book how the presidents at the time and the Secretary of States at the time said that America gives nothing in this deal. It's only good for America. And yet within 11 years, we show this like massive drop off in American manufacturing jobs, just absolute vaporization of industries and towns, whole towns. Just, I mean, it is dramatic. And I think I snidely commented that, I think Friedman didn't account for that he did a revision to Capitalism and Freedom in 2002. And then he didn't account for some of this data from NAFTA, actually. So NAFTA happened in like 94. So he did a revision in 2002 and that didn't address any of the data that we learned that, hey, this is vaporizing whole cultures and turning us into the Rust Belt. Didn't address it at all. So, the data was something that I found overwhelming. It wasn't like I had to hunt hard. It was overwhelmingly in favor of the policies in my book. I left out exponentially more than I put in. And that's what is, I think, very compelling. I think more needs, I see my book as a foundation stone, a start for other people to start to take aspects of it and get more data and drill into more separate subjects. I want it to be almost like I think it should be read in schools. I think every, public entity that has a Buy American mandate, like cities and stuff, have we have a Buy American mandate for this government institution like an airport, right? I think the employees should be made to read my book so they understand the importance of it to a nation. You know what I mean? So I'm not just saying that because my book. I'm saying it because the future of our nation depends on whether we can make our own goods or not. And so.
Yeah, no, and you totally made that clear in the book. And I just want to throw out there, we know there are grifters. No matter what happens, they're going to be grifting, okay? We got to try to stop it. We got to try to stop the price gouging. So I would throw this out there. I know of several companies who are making products here who moved it overseas. And in zero cases, so one company I use a lot as an example is a golf ball. So their premium golf ball line, they moved overseas. The price did not change. Now, if you read their quarterly reports, publicly traded company, and their annual reports, they did it to make themselves more money. Didn't benefit the American golfer one bit. Didn't make the product cheaper, right? It was all about making money. And the same will happen in reverse. So as soon as you say, all right, we're going to put a tariff on something, they're going to be the car salesman mentality out there saying, well, now I can really give it to the and so we always need to be on the lookout for that because every basket of apples is going to have a bad one in it. Very large basket, I guess. But so we just have to be cognizant of that. That's not something we can ever step away from, right? And so you have to have competition. You have to have competition. I love it. There's all these videos like 6 companies own everybody. We need true competition. I mean, I think a good example of this is the cell phone arena. There's a lot of you have new cell phone companies starting up. You have, and the prices are pretty. You see some really aggressive prices, at least over the last 5 years, on different services. People fighting, trying to get that market share, right? And so you need competition for a healthy industry. And what we don't want is any more monopolies.
There's a really good point on that competition. I didn't include this in the book, which there's a lot of stuff I wanted to include, but
Sure.
I point out in the book how if I didn't have a local manufacturer, because offshoring is really for larger corporations. That's becoming less so as with the internet and and Temu and Shimu and all. That's going to start. The wave of stuff going overseas is going to really accelerate. I think it's only just getting started if we continue to allow this to go on. But I was only able to be in business because I had a manufacturer local to me that could work out the details of my product. But the CEO of Under Armour gave a very compelling story in his, his honorary graduate degree or whatever. And he talked about how when he was starting a clothing company, and he said this was in, I think, the South, not too deep South, but he said there was a lot of clothing manufacturing textile companies around there. He's like, I would have never been able to start Under Armour if I hadn't been able to physically go into each of these companies, drive there and work through things with them. He's like, and he brings that up, and he almost starts to say something about making stuff in the USA, and he caught himself, I think, probably because they don't do that anymore. But he did say, he's like, it was a real, he's like, I would have never been able to do what I did if I hadn't been able to physically go into this place. And that is true. Globalization and unilateral free trade played the bigger players, because if you're a startup guy out of college, you really generally don't, unless you're funded and you're not independent then. And, you really, it's harder for you to start off on your own. There's so many production issues with any product. You can have the simplest product in the world, and there's production issues, and to be able to physically go in and work through these with somebody is of high value. And so to your point of what you said last time about being able to go into a local company, having competition, because, it creates more competition if you could have 25 people that want to start a clothing line. So they all are going into all these local shops trying to get somebody to make them stuff. It creates competition. If you just have one monolithic company offshoring to a big slave labor colony over in China, that's less competition.
Yeah, and we need truth in advertising. We need truth in we need the truth. We need, a lot of these companies, one company has borne up a controlling share in multiple competitors and are driving the direction they go. And we as the consumer, we think, oh, they're totally different brands. They compete. They're not the same thing. Well, in reality, they're all towing the same line because the controlling shares are controlled by people who are just trying to maximize their profit. They somehow think they're going to be able to take it with them. And I got bad news for them. You can't take it with you. But
yeah. One last note on competition. Again, 252 of the there's 252,000 manufacturing companies in America. 75% of them are 20 employees or less. That's very competitive. However, the defense industrial base, its core suppliers from, I think, 94 till now has shrunk from 74 to 5.
Yeah, that's
so the
bad.
defense industrial base, the politicians, the DoD people behind it are really steering our national security into a very, dumb place. So that small, the manufacturing industry in America represents competition with the smaller shops and in the smaller companies that can grow if they have the volume. But that needs to trickle down from the government entities.
Yeah, and I can't, I just want to say to the audience, I can't impress on you enough that John did a great job with this book. It's not super long, right? It's not like 400 pages. I know, like Peter Narrow's book, I never finished it because I got halfway through and I was kind of like, got on to other things. But it's an excellent book, and I'd love to see a volume 2. But this is, I think, one of the books where you can actually use it to help educate some of the people in your family, in your business, vendors or customers you work with, because John has done the hard part. He's gone out and got all the facts and all the data. And this is kind of like a show copy for the office, but I was really tempted to get the highlighter out and just go crazy with it. But and it is available as a paperback. It is available as a PDF, ebook. It's available not just on Amazon. It's available on Walmart, and it was fighting with Amazon pricing wise to try to have some parity there. So you can. It's John believes in having it in all the places that you have good books.
Bookshop.org is a good one. They're like independent bookstores. Go buy one from the Crash in Lakeland, Florida. They're a friend of mine owns that. And then Barnes and Noble, and but I consider it the book for our industry. Like you said, I wanted everybody in. I send out packages every day full of cutting tools and inserts and that, and I put a card in there that says the book for our industry with that cover on, because I find so many people. I'd go to meetings and people are like, what do you do? And they kind of the vacant look, like I'm on the manufacturing industry. So I appreciate you defining it as an educational tool for family and friends.
Yeah, no, it's great. And if anybody wants to know more about the art, like's on the cover, he came on and he went through his art collection, and it was one of my favorite episodes. And then, of course, we had our original episode together. So if you want to get 2 more hours of time with John Gardner from CNC Birch Tours and the author of Manufacture Local, I know I have myself as a small guy, and he's the big guy on the screen. But please check those previous episodes out. And so I've had you for an hour, and I don't want to keep you all day because we could talk for forever.
Yeah, yeah.
But is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to get into this episode?
I think we covered it. I mean, I feel like we could talk for 4 hours, but I think we covered everything. Thanks for keeping it on the book.
Okay, great. So I think everybody knows, again, I always say this, that, these are our opinions. And we've said this in our previous two episodes as well. We expect you all, there's 8 billion of you. We expect you guys to have all have your own opinions. I love to hear them because I learn, like I tell my wife, you're sitting on the other side of the stadium. You saw an interception. I saw pass interference. We're both right from our perspective, right? And it's, we got to rely on the refs to do their job. But so we want to hear your opinions. If you guys want to come on the show and talk about your favorite book about manufacturing or automation, maybe you wrote your own book. We did have the author of the Book of Code Sys on. That was a great episode. A lot of people love that. So we'd love to have you on. Just contact me directly because I'm the only one at Insights in Automation. But John, I just want to thank you again for coming on the show, and thank you for writing
Thanks for
this
having
book.
me. Thanks for having me, Shawn. I always love talking to you. Like that episode with the artwork that we talked. That was one of my favorite times ever. I've watched that a couple times since then. That was really fun.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I want to thank John for not only coming on the show to talk about his new book, but also sponsoring this episode so it would be completely ad-free. So please, if you get a chance, go out and grab a copy of his book. You don't have to get the hard copy like I did for $27. You can get it for much less by either getting the paperback or the ebook. But please, show your support to John. If we could sell 50 copies here to cover his cost to sponsor this episode, I would greatly appreciate it. It takes me unbelievably, it takes 4 to 8 hours to produce every episode. This one took at least 2 hours to edit. I just finished doing that. So any support you could give our vendors who come on the show, I'd greatly appreciate it. I also want to wish you all good health and happiness. I hope you have a great week. And until next time, my friends, peace.